A 34-year-old man in Colorado almost lost his life by making a totally radical decision: to take a shower. One moment, he was in a warm and steamy haven, and the next, he was on the ground, his body in shock, fighting to stay alive. Thankfully, the man's family found him and called for help. Paramedics arrived as soon as they could, and when they asked for more information, they were told by the family that the man was having an allergic reaction. Allergic to what? The soap? Something he ate before the shower. The responders treated the man with oxygen and epinephrine, a hormone and neurotransmitter used to treat serious allergic reactions, commonly seen in the form of an EpiPen. The patient was bolted to the hospital, still having a full-body reaction, sweating like crazy and covered in hives. He was given antihistamines and steroids to relieve and suppress symptoms of allergy. Before we get into our story, we'd like to thank this video's sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh helps you prepare meals easily without having to spend the time to meal plan and stress about shopping for groceries. HelloFresh simplifies cooking by sending you fresh ingredients with clear, printed step-by-step instructions for easy-to-cook recipes that taste delicious. The fresh ingredients from select suppliers ensure that the meals you get as a result are high quality. If you're not that great with cooking, HelloFresh helps by making the process simple so that you have fun learning new recipes without the hassle. And if you're a more experienced cook, you'll love how HelloFresh helps you bring variety to your dinners to share new recipes with loved ones. HelloFresh lets you choose from a selection of recipes each week in a great variety of options. With calorie-smart, vegetarian, and family-friendly recipes, there's something for everyone. We got a lovely Tuscan-inspired tortellini dish complemented with roasted red peppers, barbecue-style chicken dinner along with potato salad and sugar snap peas, and a Middle Eastern-inspired beef bowls complete with hummus and rice. Click the link in the description box and use our code BREWFRESH to get 65% off HelloFresh in the US or for a very special discount valid internationally. Doctors got to work figuring out what the heck had happened. The patient and his family both believed that he was having an allergic reaction. They explained that the symptoms had only started after the man had moved from Micronesia, a group of islands in the western Pacific Ocean with a tropical and warm climate. He now lived in Colorado, which had colder weather. He would break out in hives after cold exposure, but this shower incident was the most serious reaction he had ever had. They say he was allergic to the cold. So, is this even possible? The man had a condition known as Cold-Induced Urticaria. Urticaria is a raised, itchy rash that appears on the skin, and is sometimes known as hives, wheals, welts, or nettle rash. Cold-induced urticaria is tricky to diagnose and manage. It's more common in areas with a colder climate and can be triggered by exposure to low temperatures, including swimming in cold water, handling cold objects, and even consuming cold foods and liquids. The most common symptom is a red, itchy rash, and it tends to develop after the person ends the exposure. Once the part of the skin that was cold is rewarmed, only then does it develop lesions. The reaction usually takes just minutes to start. A full-body reaction like anaphylaxis is rare, but it most often occurs after full-body exposure to cold, like swimming in cold water or stepping out of a hot shower into the cold, unforgiving bathroom air. The exact cause of cold-induced urticaria is unknown, but it can be inherited and triggered by issues with immunity. According to the National Institutes of Health, one study in Europe found that 0.05% of the population had CU. When someone with this condition is exposed to the cold, their immune system releases antihistamines, which triggers inflammation, according to Live Science. Diagnosing cold-induced urticaria includes examining a patient's history, eliminating other causes, and the ice cube test. The ice cube test is a diagnostic test, also known as the cold simulation test. If you suspect you might have CU, only do this with a medical professional present. The test involves putting an ice cube on the skin for around 5 minutes, removing it, and observing the symptoms. If a red raised bump appears where the ice cube used to be, The results are considered positive, and the patient is diagnosed with CU. The test can be repeated with shorter intervals of time to determine the minimum exposure required for a reaction to start. If no welts form after 5 to 10 minutes, the results are negative, though according to a study by Ilana Faye Hochstatter and Moshe Ben Shoshan, negative ice cube test results are sometimes seen in uncommon forms of CU. One study from a group of doctors in Denver and San Diego suggested 3 levels of severity. Type 1 is confined to the area of skin that encountered the cold. Type 2 is generalized urticaria, an overall body reaction and not associated with cardiovascular or respiratory symptoms like shortness of breath. And Type 3 refers to patients with multiple episodes and symptoms and signs of respiratory or cardiovascular compromise. In an unusual case of CU, a 9-year-old girl complained about how she would feel itchiness on her arms and face after walking through the freezer aisle at the grocery store with her family. The girl would scratch the areas to relieve the itch and would get welts where she scratched. Other than this reaction to cold and a cat allergy, she was a healthy kid, though her family history was prone to seasonal allergies on her mom's side. The girl and her mom said that for the past 5 weeks, she had been having reactions like hives after being exposed to the cold. During a physical exam, she showed the doctor lesions on her lower legs which showed up after cold and rainy days when she had walked outside with pants that were shorter than usual. The patient also had experienced a more widespread reaction on her body one time after swimming. After the swimming incident, the girl's mom gave her diphenhydramine, an antihistamine, and the symptoms subsided a few hours later. The itchy rash and welts after walking through the grocery store also tended to clear up on their own after a few hours, even without medication. The girl had recently been examined by a school physician and was deemed to be healthy with no illnesses. But a few weeks after that, the worst incident yet occurred. The girl was having a delicious treat one day, a sweet, refreshing strawberry slushie. She gulped it down, but then noticed that she was having difficulty swallowing. Her lips swelled and got a rash, and she felt like there was a huge lump in her throat. The strange part is that the next day, the girl ate ice cream and didn't have any issues. Her mom took her to another doctor, who ruled out allergies to strawberry or anything else in the slushie. The doctor performed the ice cube test, took the ice off, and watched as a big red bump showed up within 3 minutes. The girl was diagnosed with cold-induced urticaria. After discussing options with the doctor, her mother decided it was best to use diphenhydramine as needed. And the doctor also gave her an epinephrine injector in case of emergency. 3 months after the beginning of all the issues, the patient's only complaint was that her hands got very dry if they were cold. And at the 6-month mark, there were no symptoms at all, and the ice cube test came back negative. A more severe case happened to a 12-year-old girl several months after she moved from Florida to the northeastern United States. It got so bad that she couldn't tolerate cold liquids or foods or any outdoor activities in the cold. I mean, I was always happy to have an excuse to get out of gym class, but I'm not sure if literally being allergic to the air outside is worth it. The 12-year-old patient in this case also had asthma since she was a baby. Her reaction started out more mild, with the skin that had been exposed to cold developing a rash, itchiness, and then lesions. The lesions developed pretty quickly as her skin was rewarmed after exposure, and they disappeared within an hour after taking diphenhydramine, leaving no bruises or discoloration. Over time, the girl's reactions became more severe, to the point where one day, after she was swimming in the ocean, she had trouble breathing and standing up. The shortness of breath and dizziness forced her to lay down. She breathed deeply and took diphenhydramine. Her symptoms went away, but it was a very scary experience. The patient had also initially been able to eat some cold food and drink cold drinks, but by now she couldn't tolerate it at all and felt itchiness in her lips, tongue, and throat if she tried to consume anything cold, as well as a full feeling like a lump in her throat. The old ice cube test resulted in a massive wheal forming and a wide area of skin reacting with an itchy and irritable flare. Because of the patient's history of respiratory or cardiovascular compromise with cold, she was diagnosed with type 3 cold urticaria. Unlike in the other case, This young girl did not improve even after typical treatments like doses of the antihistamine cetrizine, the asthma medication montelukast, and other antihistamines like cyproheptadine. She continued to struggle with her asthma and the cold, and the frequency and severity of her reactions actually got worse, leading to a trial of omalizumab, an anti-IgE treatment for allergic conditions. She was to get injections every 2 weeks. After only her second dose, the girl was able to tolerate cold drinks with only a bit of discomfort. After 2 months of treatment, she could handle being exposed to cold air and being in ocean water with only mild symptoms again. 3 months after that, there were no symptoms at all, and the ice cube test came back negative. When the patient missed 2 doses, her symptoms came back, but they immediately subsided again with her next injection. The young girl actually found that her asthma and congestion issues became much more manageable, and she was able to reduce her usual daily dose of nasal spray. She was soon up to all the winter activities, like skiing, swimming, having a snowball fight, and making snow cookies. I don't know what outside people do in the winter. As you can see in these cases, cold urticaria is usually quite treatable. Sometimes it even goes away on its own after weeks or months. In more serious cases, it can last longer. However, there is no cure for the condition. Treatment and preventative steps are usually prescribed to help with relieving symptoms and suppressing reactions. Your doctor may recommend home remedies like over-the-counter antihistamines and avoiding exposure to cold temperatures. If that doesn't help, people with the condition may need prescription medication. Medications used to treat cold urticaria include non-drowsy antihistamines taken before exposure to prevent reactions, and some asthma medications that have been used successfully on people who didn't respond to other medications. If the cold urticaria is because of an underlying health problem, people may need medications or other treatment for that condition as well. If there is a history of serious reactions, doctors may prescribe an epinephrine autoinjector as well. As for our 34-year-old male patient, the doctor gave him the ice cube test to confirm a diagnosis of cold-induced urticaria. He was advised to avoid exposure to cold water, like swimming in cold temperatures and other situations of full-body exposure to the cold. He was also prescribed an epinephrine autoinjector in case of future emergency situations. I don't enjoy being cold at all, but I'm definitely glad my skin doesn't break out in hives when I'm chilly. But if any of the symptoms of cold-induced urticaria sound familiar to you or someone you know, it's not a bad idea to bring it up with a doctor and potentially resolve that frustrating situation. Remember, click the link in the description box and use our code BREWFRESH to get a very special discount from HelloFresh to make cooking simple today.